Okay, Shavua Tov, Boker Tov, everybody. We're learning the month of Cheshvan. Sponsored Lilu Nishmas Bas Yefega Bas Yisrael, Lilu Nishmas Frida Sim Bas Yitzchak, and by the Stern family, memory of Leah's Abba Meir Yitzchak ben Yosef Eliyahu Kohen upon his 50th yahrzeit, by the American family for the Refuah Shlema of their son Hillel Tzvi Yehuda, and by Tal Gilboa Yaakov Stein in honor of all our Chayalim HaKadoshim. The week is sponsored by Michal and Yudi Reinitz, the Refuahs Avram Chaim ben Bracha Rivka, and Sarah Rivka Bas Brindel Leah, and anonymously the Eli Nishmas Chayal HaKadosh Ariel ben Gavriel Veshoshana Sosnov. May the light and Kedusha he brought to the world continue to inspire each of us to do better. And today, that was the month, the week today is anonymously sponsored in honor of my mother's birthday, who's with us today. And today's my mother's birthday. Should I say what number?
I don't care if I didn't. A number is just a number.
My mother's 70th birthday today. Baruch Hashem. A number is just a number. Zenachon. Here, you can pass these out to everybody. What page is it just saying? What does it say on top?
62.
Okay. Now, today, the learning today, it may seem very contradictory to a theme we've been talking about the last few weeks, because the title of the shir today is Matai Yavo Mashiach. Now that seems completely counter to everything we've been learning. So we're going to explain a little bit. We're going to ask a question or two to understand this a little bit better before we look at it inside. We've mentioned a number of times in all shiurim, but also in this one as well, we've mentioned the fact that people didn't normally always speak. People didn't talk so much about Mashiach. People definitely didn't speak so much about mamash, like ikvis of the Mashiach, like mamash right there. What makes today different than any other time in the history that we're speaking about it so much? That is next week's shir, and I'll explain why. Because first we have to understand a different concept of a timeline, of the context of time. What I love so much when this happens, and it wasn't planned like this, is when a shir that we're learning that Kivyachol has nothing to do with the parshas is exactly aligned with the Parshiyot HaShavua. And that's always a simon. It's like, I feel like it's a wink. It's like saying, Yofi, I'll throw you these candies, just keep on learning, and you'll see that these candies and remazim and connections are going to come together. So there's a lot to cover. I want to go right into it. Because I think if I didn't explain the context of the question, we'd be like, this is a very confusing shir, because we've been spending the last few weeks explaining how no one knows exactly when Mashiach is going to come. But the question is, do we have a different type of a timeline of when Mashiach is going to come? One more pasuk I want you to keep in mind while we're learning. We have a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Ki elef shanim be'einecha ki yom etmol. You know that pasuk? Ki elef shanim be'einecha ki yom etmol. It's a pasuk in Tehillim where we say, like, in Hashem's counting of days, 1,000 days of us is like Yom Etmol, is like a day by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does that pasuk exactly mean? And especially in the context of our learning today. Matai Yavo Mashiach haderech el hageulah. Ha'olam mitnael al pi tochnit elokit kvuah merosh. We know the world is running and conducted by a godly plan that's been planned since before there was even a world. Before there was even a world, I know it looks like a total balagan down here, but there's actually a seder of everything. This has been planned a long time ago, way before we got involved with anything. And we're going to try to understand what that godly plan is in God's calendar. Nekudat hamotza hi abriya, the starting point is creation. V'hayad, the destination, hu tkufat ha'atid lavo, is the time of the future which will come, where what? Sheba titmamesh bapoal kavanat abriya, what we learned last week, that the purpose of creation, the reason why Hashem created this whole world, will come into effect. And what is that purpose of creation? Liot lo yitbarach dira batachtonim. Like the Tanya tells us, that Hashem has a dwelling place down here in this world, And this world, not a higher world, but the world that you and I are living in, the world where we have colors and lights and seasons and objects, this world will be completely, as we said last time, permeated. You said it? Permeated. In Hebrew, there was a. We'll stick with that word right now. Permeated with godliness. Like, think about it. Right now, is the world could be infused. That's why all these words are correct. Nachon. I mean, today, when you look at the world, is the world saturated with godliness? Nachon. Yeah, don't say no. Nachon. Parts of it. A bunch of women coming every Sunday morning to learn about days of Mashiach. Yesh mashu. You can't say, we're back in Eretz Yisrael. There's tons of, you have Chayalim Kedushim giving their, this is like Mesirus Nefesh to the utmost. So, of course there's Elokut in the world. But that's, what he's saying over here is when we say that Hashem shall have a dwelling place down here, it means full on. There is no Hester in this world. Not in this other world that was waiting for us. Here. This is what we're doing here, in this world. Now, the days of the existence of the world, this is where it gets really funky. This is like a famous Gemara, but we're going to unwrap it. We're going to unwrap this Gemara. Shnot kiyum ha'olam. So all the days of the world, mitchalkot l'shalosh tkufot ikariyot. They get divided to three main periods. And I'm sure you've heard of this before. What are the three different divisions of like the days of the world? Tohu. That's one. Tohu means chaos. Torah and Yemot Hamashiach. Three different categories of time. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, the Gemara mefaretet et chalukat atkufot, and the Gemara goes into great detail. When is when? When is the period of chaos? When is the period of Torah? And when is the period of the days of Mashiach? So the Gemara says like this, Sheshet alafim shana have alma. The world is 6,000 years long. What year are we in right now? 5,785. That means we're pretty close. You know the band Revel Sheva. Why do you think their name was 6:45? Because they wrote a good song exactly at 6:45? No. Because on a timeline, we are actually Revel Sheva. We're right before Sheva, right before the end, right before Shabbos. That's why it's called. That's why the band was called Revel Sheva. Did you guys know that? No. And did you know the band Revel Sheva? Mm-hmm. Most of us know the band Revel Sheva. Okay, so the Gemara. Okay, so the 6,000 years is the whole world. Shnei alafim, the first 2,000 years, is the period of Tohu. Shnei alafim, the period of the next 2,000 years, is Torah. Shnei alafim, and then 2,000 years of Yemot Mashiach. Let's divide these up a little bit more clearer when each takes place. Tkufat Tohu, when was that, and did that finish yet? Yes, it did. Although it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but it did. תקופת התוהו נסתיימה כאשר התחיל אברהם אבינו לפעול להפצת האמונה בקו אחד וקירב לאמונה הזאת אלפי בני אדם. כמו שהתורה מספרת על הנפש אשר עשו בחרן, which we just read. So there's 2,000 years, the first 2,000 years. Avraham Avinu, it's almost exact because Avraham Avinu begins his real professional, like mivtzoyim, tefillin booths, right, the shlichus, at the age of 52, more or less. Even though it says ben shalosh shanim ekir et baro, but until he really started to like go out and do something in the world, it says be'erech 52. Now, what age? How old was? When was Avraham Avinu born? Which means 52.
2000.
Yeah, which means 2000, which is pretty wild.
Simple math.
Yeah, not so complicated. Yeah.
No. She said you're good at math. I said simple math. High school math and I were not friends.
Right. So, the tkufa of tohu. I mean, it's hard for us to relate to such a world where imagine if everything that was going on is going on today, but there was no such thing as a shul, as Torah, as Hashem, as these bodhidus. Back then, these first 2,000 years were just complete tohu. It was chaos. It was chaotic. That when the Gemara says the first 2,000 years, it refers to then, which is pretty crazy on a Torah timeline, because that means that the kufa of tohu lasted for 2 parshas. That's all. I mean, that's all it did. It lasted for 2 parshas, Bereshit and Noach. That's the 2,000-year period of tohu. Remember, there's 10 generations from Adam till Noach, and there's another 10 generations from Noach till Avram Avinu. He's the 21st generation. And that's when the period of tohu comes to an end. The period of chaos is done. Avram Avinu החל להפיץ בעולם את האמונה בהשם אחד. הדבר גם תואם גם את מאמר המדרש. This fits with what the Midrash says. עד אברהם היה העולם מתנהג באפלה. Till Avram Avinu, the world was in utter darkness. That's why the Lubavitcher Rebbe says that at the end of Parshas Noach, when we even hear that there was a person called Avram and Sarai, there's already a big simcha. In Parshat Lech Lecha, which talks about the first relationship between Jew, eventual Jew, and God, is a big simcha in the world. He came in and now there's a simcha. Parshas Lech Lecha is a big simcha. עד אברהם היה העולם מתנהג באפלה, משבא אברהם התחיל להאיר. But now that Avram Avinu comes in, the illumination begins. זה היה בדיוק בסוף האלף השני, like Tal pointed out, כאשר אברהם היה בן 52 שנים. That is, on our calculations, the year 2000. עולם התוהו.
Where would it 52 from? Because Hashem first appeared to him when he was 75, no?
Yeah, but the Midrash is filled with things that he was doing before that age.
Okay.
What's one of the most famous ones? In terms of letting the world know there's God, God is one? Huh?
The story that he was the sun, and then
That's the Midrash of Baal Abira, Nachon. There's also the Midrash that speaks about Nimrod throwing him into the fire, into the furnace. Obviously, an earlier Midrash speaks about how Avram Avinu took the idol in his father's idol shop and started causing balaganim. That's where it comes from. Okay, that's the period of the first 2,000 years. Then the Gemara says the next period of time in God's timeline is called Tkufat HaTorah, the era of Torah. When did that finish? Nistaima basof ha'elef ha'revi'i. That finished at the end of the 4,000th year, which is when, on a timeline for us, Zaya samuch lechatimat ha'mishnah im reshita shel tkufat ha'amoraim. This is towards the end of Rav Ashi finishing, signing off on, hey, here's the Mishnah. Here's the Mishnah. What is Mishnah basically? It's the initial discussions of Chazal trying to understand clearer what did the Torah mean when it said so-and-so. That's Mishnah. Now Mishnah also comes from the language Leshanot, which means to repeat and learn and go over to try to understand things better. Also Shinun, which means to sharpen things. It means to get things a little bit clearer. That represents those next 2,000 years. את סיומה של תקופת התורה אפשר לראות גם בכך. Now, why do we say that that's the end of the era of Torah? It's a little bit offensive. We're not in that. Which hopefully, like I want to be in that also. There's no Torah going on today. There's more Talmud Torah today than there ever was ever in the world. Not just in Eretz Yisrael, in the whole world. There was never so much learning Torah. But to understand it in the context of a timeline of eras. So it says that you could see also שלאחר חתימת המשנה לא ניתנה עוד סמכות מוחלטת כל כך של פסיקת הלכה כפי שניתנה לתנאים, חכמי המשנה. Because who got the halachic authority to construct for what we have today to be halacha in its most concrete manner? Then, the Tanaim. Nachon, that kufa. It's true, you have to keep on looking at the world and understanding there's advances, v'chule, but the general context of halacha and its form was finally formed there. They got the authority. And since then, we're really working on their halachic framework. Now, many people have a really, really hard time with this because they feel that it's not accurate to the times that we're living in. There's many voices out there in the world. I just had a long discussion over Shabbos with someone regarding a certain halacha, where they felt that it was true 1,000,000% then, but he believes fully that that's not shayach to our times as well. There's a lot I'm not going to go on that tangent right now because there's a lot to speak about in that regard. I will tell you that even though we feel that we're acting in accordance to a very loyal, authoritative halachic context, if the Tanaim walked into our shul or to almost any shul today or any form of Yiddishkeit today, they probably wouldn't recognize it. Right? Not just here and not also in Mashiach, meaning it's not that they wouldn't recognize it. But the basics upon which Judaism has built itself of a halachic, of a world of Torah context, it ended, the framework of it ended back then with the ending of the signing off of the Mishnah in the hands of the Tanaim that were filled with Ruach HaKodesh. Rav Shlomo once said, do you know why you have to daven Shachris Mincha Maariv? Because Ravina and Rav Ashi thought about you, and that's what it means, Emunas Chachamim. That when they set up Shmona Esrei, and the way the Anshe Knesset Agdola set up Shmona Esrei, and all the halachas that come around Tefillah, they were thinking about, Emunas Chachamim means they thought about me. They mamish thought about me, and in their Ruach HaKodesh, they knew this is what a Jew would need till Mashiach comes. And everything on top of that is flavor, and it's important, it's energy, but again, the basic frame is 2,000 years of Torah ended then. Az hechelat kufa chadasha, and then a new time began. Yemot Mashiach. What's the shocker about this? When did Yemot Mashiach begin? When did the days of Mashiach come? Do a clear cheshbon. How many years ago? 1,785 years ago. 1,785 years ago is when the period of Yemot Mashiach began? Yes, according to the Gemara. Now let's understand what that means. But so far I wanted to make sure. What we did right now is clear in terms of how the Gemara looks at the days of the world. Yeah? I'm not saying do you relate or agree. You can do whatever you want, but I'm just trying to give over how the Gemara in Sanhedrin is giving it over to us. That means that 1,785 years ago, nearly 2,000 years ago, the days of Mashiach began. What does that mean? What does that mean? We've been through Auschwitz. We've been through the Inquisition. There's so many pogroms and so much tsaras that have happened during a time that Chazal have labeled Yemot HaMashiach. Any sane person would say, if this is what Yemot HaMashiach is about, this is not for me. I just don't want to take part in this. Why would I want to take part of such a thing? This is called Yemot HaMashiach. These are the days of Mashiach. Doesn't make any sense.
Did it start right after, did it start after the destruction of Beis Hamikdash? Yeah.
Of course.
So then that makes sense. Like, because, we had Hashem and then Beis Hamikdash, and then once it was gone, it's like, that's the beginning of the next, cycle.
Well, what I mean to say is that wouldn't you want to reserve a period called Yemot HaMashiach for a different feeling in the air? Right?
Some sort of time. Like a different way of looking at it.
No, of course. Okay, Yemot HaMashiach. Now let's understand, what does it mean to live in this era called Yemot HaMashiach? עכשיו, כ-1,800 שנים לאחר מכן, about closer to 1,800 years later, כשעדיין לא נושענו, we still have not been redeemed, אולי נראה תמוה שהתקופה הזאת נקראת ימות המשיח. Yeah, it seems a little strange that this period is called the days of Mashiach. האומנם ימים אלה הם ימות המשיח? הלא זו התקופת הגלות הארוכה על כל מוראותיה, ייסוריה, רדיפותיה ותלאותיה. How many people have been killed because they're Jewish in a period that's called Yemot HaMashiach? That's a very real question, and we have to address this. There's no way of going around it. And the answer, well, look, now Yidden are back living in Eretz Yisrael does not mean anything to that inner pain of a mother crying over her son's grave about the concept of where are you and where's Mashiach. You understand? So let's get things a little bit clearer. Ela shakavana בהגדרת התקופה ימות המשיח היא. What does it mean? We're in the period of the days of Mashiach. שבתקופה הזאת יכול היה לבוא משיח, meaning it was possible in this time for Mashiach to come. Okay, that means, according to this, even the feasible possibility of Mashiach appearing in the first 4,000 years was not a possibility. Mashiach was not, he could not have come in the time of Adam. He could not have come in the time of Noach. He could not have come in the time of Avram Avinu, the Shvatim, Moshe Rabbeinu. He could not have come in the time. I always wondered, like, why didn't David HaMelech just reveal himself as Melech HaMashiach? Like, if it comes from him, then why didn't he just finish the job? It would have made life a little bit more simple. And also, we have the famous question, is that, which we've asked so many times here, why didn't Mashiach come in the time of the first Beit HaMikdash? If we have to compare, if we have to think of any era as totally euphoric, that is the place we always, not the second Beit HaMikdash, the first Beit HaMikdash. That's the place we always go to. Like, how could it be that it didn't come then? According to this, the feasibility of Mashiach, the possibility of Mashiach coming into the world in those eras was not possible. That was not the time for it. This is how the Abarbanel explains the distinction, the division between these timelines, as he says over here. כך מסביר רבי יצחק אברבנאל, ש2,000 השנים הללו נקראו ימות המשיח. These days, the last 2,000 years, are called ימות המשיח, לפי שהם ימים מוכנים ומתוקנים לביאתו. These are days that were כאילו set up and fixed and made available and ready for Mashiach to come. In Yizku Hador, if the generation merits. Humamshil Zot, a parable that he has, which is also shaykh to our time, is Liyamot Hagshamim, the rainy days of rain, which we should be blessed with. Be'ezrat Hashem, soon. She'en hechrech sheyu tamid yemei geshem. It doesn't mean it's going to rain every day during the tkufa where you say Mashi Baruch Moed HaGeshem. It doesn't mean every single day is going to rain. But what does it mean? אלא שהכוונה היא שהם מוכנים לביאת הגשמים בהם יותר מכל ימות השנה. These days are designated more than any other days of the calendar for the possibility for rain to come down. כן גם 2,000 שנה האחרונים היו מוכנים לביאת המשיח. So the last 1,785 years, if you want to understand this a little bit clearer, to bring it down a little bit more, these last 1,785 years are more, what's the right word? They're more, not suitable.
Primed.
Sorry?
Primed.
Primed. That's pretty good. Right? Is that pretty good?
Yeah.
They're more, yeah. Is that a good word? That's my mother, yeah. Primed. They're more primed for, just like the winter months are more, would you say the same thing about winter months being primed for rain to fall down? So too, that's how we look at this like long season. It's basically 1,785 years long. Yeah.
So the Abarbanel lived in like the 1500s or something like that?
The Abarbanel is part of this tkufa.
Yeah, so why did he say 2,000 שנה האחרונים היו מוכנים? He should have said Hinam.
No.
I think he's talking about the 2,000 years of Torah.
No.
No,
I
2,000
thought
years
Yehu
after
Mukhanim would be
after
Yad
Torah.
Mashiach. He shouldn't have said Hayu. That's very sad for me.
No. It's probably just it's probably a part of a context of it. Don't get caught up in the language. It's referring to the last 2,000 years. Don't worry about it. Now Maharal mi Prague. Now we're going to see what the Maharal says, which we don't always have a chance to do. But I haven't learned Maharal in a long time. I used to learn it with Ari Erdfrab. I got to go back to it. That was my last chivrus in Maharal. Maharal mi Prague masbir shekodem litkufas yemos HaMashiach, that prior to the times of the days of Mashiach, gam ilu haya am Yisrael magia lesi hazachu, even if we became this refined people that are deserving of it, adain lo hayta geula yechola lavo. Redemption could not have come because the time wasn't time for it. אבל מאז, since then, נכנסנו לשני אלפים ימות המשיח. But that time that time has left us, and now we're in a different context of time.
Shlomo, could you just clarify something about the two Kupot of Beit HaMikdash? What were they? Where were they?
Before, they're the 2,000 years of Torah. They're the 2,000 years of Torah. Yeah. Hadavar talui banu, which we hate when I hate those words quite often. You know, I don't want it to be talui bi. I just want you to do it, Hashem. But it says hadavar talui banu. It's dependent on us. Im niske, if we merit it, tavo geula miyad. You see, what I think what they're saying here is like back then, as much as there was holiness and righteousness and clarity in a lot of areas, it didn't matter even if you on a righteousness level that people merited, they were on the level to receive Mashiach, it wasn't going to be then. Since then, im zachinu, im anachnu zochim, Mashiach comes right away. And even though it's the days of Mashiach, if we don't merit it, it hasn't happened. I'm not going to say it won't happen. Hashem can do anything. It hasn't happened. Im lo nizkeh tit'akev ha'geula, that if we don't merit, Geula will take its time. Aval hi chayevet lavo batkufa hazo. But emuna in Bias HaMashiach means it's got to come in the period of the last 2,000 years. Now, I don't want to wait for, unfortunately, or I don't know how to even relate to this, but how many more years how many years are left on this 2,000 year count? Who wants to, like a lot of the talk behind like what's going on with the army and what are they really doing? Like the decision makers, are you leaving our grandchildren with tzaras or not? With what you're like, the way that you're operating now, are you cleaning up shop in a way that's going to leave our grandchildren with probable tzaras? Or are we doing everything we possibly can to uproot the evil in its core, that the way that we would look at it, al pi teva, the nature of the aftermath of operations now, your great-grandchildren are not going to have to worry about these inyanim or not. Right? So that's a bigger, it's a very hard shaila, it's a deeper shaila. But when it comes to Mashiach time, it's very much like we say, like, okay, so I'm happy that we're closer to the end of time where it has to happen. But if I'm underneath the umbrella of time where if I merit it, it can happen right now. Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. Now, that's where those lyrics were probably. So I once heard a good svara that said, let Mashiach come on Shabbos and explain how it was possible for him to come on Shabbos, because we have a daya that says he can't. It also says that it can't be a kohen, and I'm sorry that it won't be a woman. So and my friends always say, let it be a bat kohen that comes on Shabbos that's a woman, but we know that Mashiach's going to come and solve all the tishbi yitaretz kushiyot v'sheilot. He'll come or she'll come and explain the whole geschäft as well. Okay, אבל היא חייבת לבוא בתקופה זו, but it has to come in this period of time, שבכללותה היא תקופת הכנה לגאולה, because in this entirety of its time, this is all, even if it's not Mashiach that has come, when we say Yemot Mashiach, preparation falls under the category of the days of Mashiach. Preparation, hachana, the word hachana, had nothing to do with the period of time of the 2,000 years of Tohu and the 2,000 years of Torah. It was not part of the energy of the world back then. In this last gush, of the third gush of 2,000 years, preparation, speaking about it, all learning about it, that it's all part of it as well. Zotomeret, if we learned this about 1,786 years ago, this type of talk, well, first of all, we wouldn't have the Abarbanel and the Maharal, and the Sefer wouldn't exist, but if we attempted to discuss these types of things, it'd be no shaykhus. It would be just as shaykh as us right now raising money to invest in the future development of diaspora Jewry. That level of relevance, understand? Things that are just not shaykh at all. There's nothing to do with where the world is at right now, or where the world is heading towards. It's bichlal lo kashur echad l'sheni. Okay, now that again, this is not so much soulful, deep stuff. It's just explaining the Gemara based on the Maharal and the Abarbanel. But I just want to make sure that for our learning, we address the first question. Why do we refer to this time as Yemot Hamashiach? So can we? Is it not? Is it clear? Is it clear enough, or are there still questions about this? Okay, so far so good, yeah? Okay, that's a pretty general account. But there's also a way of looking at God's calendar in a more detailed account, where it's not thousands of years, it's 1,000 years, but you'll see what I mean. HaChalukah anal, as you see, what we did before, the division we did before, that we took 6,000 years and we divided it up into 3. That's a pretty general division. Doesn't leave a lot of room for other things. It's pretty big. But let's learn this now a little bit clearer. B'divrei Raboteinu, the rabbis teach us, Mofi'a chalukah meforetet yoter. There's a more detailed division of this time. שמראה את הסדר האלוקי הפנימי ששורר בכל אחד מ6,000 השנים הללו, that shows us the inner godly order that exists in all these 6,000 years. And now we're going to learn the Ramban. Now, the reason I love this sefer is because even though it's deeply, deeply rooted in the teachings and the light of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we're learning here from everyone to understand the time that we're living in. And I love that he'll go to the Rishon, he'll go to the Ramban and try to show us, listen, these are not just chidushim that came up in the last few years. If you learn the Rishonim properly, you'll see they've been speaking about this for a very long time. How long ago was the Ramban, Be'erech? It was around about 1100, משהו כזה, yeah. A while ago. Approximately then. I don't remember the exact dates. Okay, so the Ramban says like this. כי ששת ימי הבריאה מקבילים לששת אלפי שנות קיומו הנוכחי של העולם. Let's go to the 6 days of creation and show you that each day of creation, what happened on each day of creation is actually what happened in the world and what's happening in the world. This is beautiful. וכך הוא אומר, this is what he says. ששת ימי בראשית הם כל ימות עולם. The 6 days of creation are all the days of the world that we'll ever know. כי קיומו יהיה 6,000 שנה. Because the days of the world will be, the Ramban says, 6,000 years. The Ramban was a big, big Kabbalist, the Ramban. 6,000 years will be the length of time of this world. שלכך אמרו, יומו של הקדוש ברוך הוא 1,000 שנה. That's why we have the pasuk that says, כי 1,000 שנים בעיניך כיום אתמול. That explains that pasuk we quoted before, that for Hashem, 1,000 years for us is like 1 day for you. בהמשך הדברים, later on, מסרטט הרמב"ן כמה קווים מקבילים בין אירועי הבריאה שקרו בכל יום ובין 1,000 השנה המקביל לו. Later on in his Perush, the Ramban then draws parallels to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the time of our life, the time of the world. Chassidus takes this and it starts to really draw it clearer. בצורה מפורטת יותר, even more detailed, מופיעים הדברים בתורת החסידות. Chassidus really goes at length, spends a lot of time showing this. And if you go down to footnote 8, he shows us here, למשל, מאמרי הדמור הזקן, on the Parashiyos. The Alter Rebbe was very big on this. This is not in the Tanya, but it's in the teachings of the Alter Rebbe that we have on the Parashas, which is different. Okay, so back inside, on the top. Sheshet, we're on the 4th to bottom paragraph. Sheshet Yemei HaBriyah, the 6 days of creation, כמו 6,000 שנות קיום העולם, מקבילים ל6 המידות היסודיות. This is kind of what we did during the Akafas of Simchas Torah this year. They correspond to the 6 spheres, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Sunday is Chesed, Monday is Gvura, Tuesday is Tiferet, and so on. ביום הראשון של הבריאה, on the first day of creation, האירה מידת החסד. The midah of chesed was shining in the world. Therefore, what do we have? What's created on Sunday? Light. V'lachen nivra bo ha'or ha'en-sofi. That's why the eternal light was created then. כך גם האלף הראשון של העולם, so too, the first 1,000th year, העולם היה תקופה של חסד ושפע אלוקי מופלא. There was tremendous amount of chesed and godly abundance, that was wondrous godly abundance. In what format do we see that? Well, what was the average age in the first 1,000 years of the world? Crazy. How old was Noah? How old was Adam? 930 years. Adam Arishon is 916 years, I think, right? Huh? Metoshelach is 916. This is an abundance of life, just to be alive. Whether those numbers are now our numbers, you understand? It's not like the 1,000 years of 1 year. That'd be insane if they were alive on 930 years. God's count would be right. So this is already our concept of years, right? So back then, people are living like these long, like my kid, whenever we learn Chumash, this is like one of the things that always, I'm sure your kids too, it always like pops out crazy. Like, my God, they lived for 600 years. And then like, Moshe Rabbeinu, Nebuch, only 120 years, Yes, in comparison to that first 1,000th of year, that's 900 years living. But it wasn't just them. There are people living 600, 700, all over the place. That's connected the first 1,000th years, and that's the first day of creation, the midah of chesed, where there was an abundance of light that came down to the world. Now let's go to Monday. B'yom hasheni, pa'ala midat ha'gvura. Monday comes, gvura comes into the world. Now, where do we see the gvura? What happened? What was created on the Monday? The separation between the higher waters and the lower waters. נוצרה ההבדלה בין המים התחתונים לעליונים. גם האלף השני היה תקופה של דין. מבול, מגדל בבל, that's Monday. That's the second 1,000th years. ביום השלישי, Tuesday, תפארת. פעמיים כי טוב. האירה מידת התפארת. העולם החל להתעדכן. The world began, chesed and gvura began to emerge and work together better, and boundaries and were set, and things started getting fixed. What began to happen? העולם החל להתעדכן. נראתה יבשה. What does that mean? נראתה יבשה. What began to emerge and be seen? Dry land, meaning coming from flood to dry land. החלה הצמיחה של העשבים והפירות. Vegetation began to take place. Fruits and vegetables are coming out. כך גם באלף השלישי, so in this third 1,000th years, החלה להתגלות התכלית של הבריאה. What else took place during that third 1,000? The purpose of creation, יציאת מצרים. We left Egypt. נבחר עם ישראל וניתנה התורה. Am Yisrael was chosen, the Torah was given. That's also during the day of Tuesday, which is the midah of Tiferet. כך גם מוסברים האירועים שקרו בימי הבריאה הנוספים, וההקבלה שלהם לאלפי השנים המתאימים. We can continue doing this, he says. ביום הרביעי, on Wednesday, נתלו המאורות, ובאלף הרביעי, what does that mean, that נתלו המאורות? They were set. The Ma'or HaGadol והמאור הקטן, they were set. ובאלף הרביעי, and on the 4,000th years, עמדו שני בתי המקדש, the two lights, right? The two Beis HaMikdash were existed. שמהם יצא אורה לכל העולם כולו, and its light emerged for the whole world. This is beautiful, no? This is absolutely gorgeous.
Also different sizes.
Huh? And also different sizes. ביום החמישי, what happens on Thursday? שרצו המים, הנפש חיה ועוף החל לעופף, רמז להתגברות ממשלת האומות באלף החמישי. On Thursday, what begins to emerge? The animal kingdom begins to emerge, and the governance of different entities starts to appear. וכך אנו מגיעים ליום השישי, and here we come to Friday, שבו הגיע העולם לשלמותו. And what happens on Friday? After all this is set up, נברא האדם. Then man is set up. On what day of the Sphira would this be corresponding to? Yesod. Tzadik Yesod Olam. Nachon, Yesod. Tzadik Yesod Olam. זה רמז לשלמותו של העולם באלף השישי. This alludes to the completion of man in our era. Right? באלף השישי, what does it mean, the 6,000th? That's now. נכון? אלף השישי now means now, man, with all of its mishigasas, human beings. This is the era of tikkun ha'adam bishlemuto. That man is supposed to get their acts together in the most perfect manner, which just shows you where to look. I mean, this is not about getting into the back end of American politics, but if after all these years, this is what America has to offer between these two candidates, it just shows you how much that's not where, and Hashem should bless the chevra that are running the show there now to be good for Yidden. It's nothing to do with, no contradiction. In terms of tikkun adam, you're not going to take Mesilas Yesharim Shirim from Donald Trump, right? And you're definitely not going to take it from her either. But in terms of shlemut ha'adam, like manches, like just tikkun ha'adam, that's for our time right now. And we don't have to go anywhere else in the world. And any righteous spiritual leader from an Eastern religion will tell you, like they did to Chana Sarah, you have it all in Yiddishkeit. And I've had these conversations many times over the years with people like, how do you know if someone's bemet, not coming from Yiddishkeit, but they're spiritually conscious people. Their consciousness is mamish wide and expanding. So when you go up from birth, you don't even think that anyone that's not Jewish has a relationship with God, which is just very sad and unfortunate. But then when you see, they have all these Rebbes and Gurus and Swamis and everything. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them understand, they know, well, some of them are Yidden, actually. But those that aren't Yidden, it's actually the Yidden, the Yiddish ones are the hardest ones to ever tell you, go back to Yiddishkeit to receive it from them, how to be mit tikkun adam. But by us, by Chazal, we don't need anything. We don't need anything from anyone to teach us how to be a mensch at all. This is the period where that's really supposed to be perfected. Tikkun Adam. That's because we were created on Friday, we're in Friday. And it's almost Shabbos. But by us, who is the most perfected human being, which is exactly the distinction between us and our non-Jewish brothers and sisters that believe in a pretty big difference, is that our Mashiach is the most perfected human being. Not God, but a human being that comes onto the scene on Friday. He's a human being. It's not, you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This is not someone that, we all come from Hashem, but זהו רמז לשלמותו של העולם באלף השישי שבו נברא ומתגלה האדם השלם ביותר. Who is the most fixed and complete person? מלך המשיח. ובלשון הרמב"ן, זהו, and the Ramban says, who is that? זהו בן דוד, הנעשה בצלם אלוקים. Like when it says, in Parshas, when we just learned in Bereshis, בצלם, the man was created בצלם אלוקים, in the frame, in the shade, and however you want to say it, the most perfected human being that's created in the image of Hashem is Mashiach, is Melech HaMashiach. And we'll learn much more about his tchunot, his qualities. Mashiach's qualities is a very big part of the Sefer too. Klomar, ha'elef hashishi ze ha'elef shemechin et ha'olam likrat ha'geula. So this last 1000th year is the time. So now it's not 2,000 years, it's just the last 1000th year, whereas the time that's preparing the world for Geula, according to Chassidus. But during that time, ba umitgale amelech HaMashiach. It's not just a time for prep, because you could learn it like that and say, listen, we're going to do our best to prepare the world for Mashiach to come, and then in another 185 years, 125 years, right? 125 years, Then it'll be 215 years. Then it'll be right. No. Within that time frame, up here the Alter Rebbe, within that time frame of the last 1,000 years, then also the prep and the revelation and the emergence of this perfected human being will come to be as well. Again, it's so hard to always go back. So what does it depend on? Im zachu, right? The whole us business, which is like what more could we possibly do? Apparently there is something, because there's still rivers of tears that are coming down, and apparently it's not enough. So maybe he wants more holy chutzpah. I don't know. Whatever it is, maybe that's a perfection of human being. I don't know. Moshe Rabbeinu was a pretty perfect human being, and he was the master of holy chutzpah, telling Hashem, "You're going to be bad to Jews because they did wrong. If that's your business, you and I are done." And Chazal always look at that and say that was the tikkun of Noach, who didn't have that relationship at all with God. And that's also why, like we learned many times, Moshe Rabbeinu's response to Hashem saying, "I'm just going to destroy the world," he says, "I'm going to destroy Yidden." So what's the word in Hebrew that he uses? Mecheni. Mecheni is also the letters Mei Noach. It's a tikkun for what Noach didn't do, right? Main the waters of Noach. It's a tikkun for that. And Hashem tells Noach, bye-bye to the world, and he says, well, okay, the frum thing is to don't disagree with God. Moshe Rabbeinu says the real frum thing is to mamish avoli chutzpah. So I don't know. Maybe it's that. Because we were thinking about like what else is left to do. I don't know. There's no idea. In the musag. But to learn about it and to prepare for it is part of it. And that's what we're doing in this year. And Be'ez Hashem will continue this next Sunday, okay? Okay, Shavua Tov, and only good news, everybody.